It's something Gladys Knight told her son, Shanga Hankerson, in private years ago, something he says he'll never forget. It's why Shanga and his ex-wife, Gloria, reached out to the Shade Room last week with disturbing allegations of elder abuse.
I don't want my mom out on tour, on a tour bus, wondering where she's at. That's my mom. I truly love her and don't care about her ever working a second longer while she's alive.
Remember Gladys Knight. Her son's revelations have left fans stunned.
The direction that she's going in is it's pushing her to a departure, and I don't want to see that.
At 81, Gladys Knight is trapped in a nightmare. Her own son has filed elder abuse charges against her husband. Allegations of cognitive decline, midnight wandering episodes, and forced touring despite obvious confusion. This is the explosive story of how America's beloved soul legend became a prisoner in her own life. At 81 years old, Gladys Knight should be enjoying her golden years as one of music's most celebrated legends. Instead, explosive allegations from her own family paint a disturbing picture of cognitive decline, midnight wandering episodes, and an elderly icon who may no longer recognize her own circumstances. The allegations center around a formal elder abuse complaint filed with North Carolina's Department of Health and Human Services. Knight's son claims his mother is showing severe signs of mental deterioration while being forced to maintain a grueling tour schedule that's pushing her beyond her physical and cognitive limits. The most alarming incident involves a terrifying night in Baltimore that reveals the depth of Knight's confusion and vulnerability. What happened represents a turning point that forced even Knight's professional team to confront the reality of her declining mental capacity. Knight was on tour, staying at a hotel in Baltimore, when she disappeared in the middle of the night. According to her son's account, his sister Kenya received a frantic call about their mother's whereabouts. Knight had somehow left her hotel and wandered across town to a completely different hotel, apparently confused about where she was supposed to be.
She got away from the hotel and she ended up in another hotel across town. I guess once she realized that she was on the road or somewhere she didn't know, I guess she saw a hotel and figured that's where she was supposed to go.
Knight was discovered by a hotel employee who described her as completely disoriented and unable to answer basic questions about her circumstances. She couldn't explain why she was there, where she was coming from, or whether she was a guest at the hotel. Most disturbingly, she couldn't provide any contact information or identify anyone who could help her. This wasn't a case of temporary confusion or fatigue from touring. Knight was so cognitively impaired that she couldn't engage in basic conversation about her immediate circumstances. The hotel employee had to take Knight's phone and scroll through contacts to find someone who could retrieve her, a level of helplessness that suggests significant cognitive decline. The Baltimore incident forced Knight's road manager, Larry Ward, to confront realities he had been trying to manage privately. When family members spoke with Ward at a concert in Athens, the longtime professional broke down emotionally while describing the mounting challenges of managing Knight's performances.
I went and I hugged him and we hugged, and he looked at me, he's like, "I'm so glad to see you." And he said, "Shane, it's been so hard. I have never seen Larry break down and cry like that."
Ward's emotional breakdown reveals the strain on Knight's professional team as they attempt to maintain performance standards while managing her declining capacity. His inability to articulate the specific challenges suggests problems too complex and troubling to easily explain. During that same Athens performance, witnesses described Knight's cognitive difficulties firsthand. The band played extended musical passages while Knight stood motionless, apparently unaware that she was supposed to be performing. Background singers had to start singing to prompt her back into the performance, and technical staff regularly had to rewind teleprompters because Knight forgot to look at them. These aren't occasional lapses or normal aging. They represent significant cognitive impairment that directly affects Knight's ability to perform the basic functions of her profession. The fact that her support team has developed workarounds for her memory problems suggests these issues are ongoing and progressive. Text messages revealed that Knight has been diagnosed with sundown syndrome, a condition associated with dementia where confusion and agitation increase during late afternoon and evening hours. This diagnosis explains the timing of the Baltimore wandering incident and suggests that Knight's cognitive issues are most severe during the exact hours when many of her performances occur. The progression of Knight's decline appears to accelerate under the stress of touring. Family members report that she becomes agitated when she doesn't know her location or her husband's whereabouts. Dependencies that make travel and performance particularly challenging for someone with cognitive impairment. Most concerning is how Knight's condition affects her judgment about safety and appropriate behavior. Someone who wanders away from supervised care in an unfamiliar city demonstrates a level of confusion that puts them at serious risk. The fact that this occurred during a professional tour, when Knight should have been under close supervision, raises questions about the adequacy of safety measures being taken. The contrast between Knight's public presentations and her private struggles highlights how cognitive decline can be temporarily masked during performances while representing severe impairment in daily functioning. Her ability to remember song lyrics or perform familiar routines doesn't indicate overall cognitive health. It may simply reflect deeply ingrained muscle memory that persists even as other mental faculties deteriorate. William McDowell entered Gladys Knight's life in 2001 as a corporate consultant, but within months he had positioned himself as the gatekeeper to one of music's most legendary figures. Their whirlwind 3-month courtship ended in marriage, and almost immediately, McDowell began consolidating control over every aspect of Knight's career and personal life. The transformation was systematic and complete. McDowell didn't just become Knight's husband, he became her manager, her business partner, and the primary decision-maker for her professional activities. For nearly 25 years, virtually every aspect of Knight's public and private life has been filtered through McDowell's management. At 67, McDowell is 14 years younger than his 81-year-old wife, creating a dynamic where he maintains physical and mental advantages that become more pronounced as Knight ages. While this age gap seemed irrelevant during their early marriage, it has become increasingly significant as questions about Knight's cognitive health emerge. The control McDowell exercises extends far beyond typical marriage partnerships. According to family allegations, McDowell has systematically isolated Knight from her family, creating barriers that prevent independent communication between mother and children. When her son visited for New Year's, McDowell allegedly tried to house him in an Airbnb rather than allowing him to stay in his childhood room.
I noticed that William would always chime in, make sure that I didn't get to speak with her by myself or by herself.
This pattern of controlled access is classic in cases of elder manipulation. By positioning himself as the essential intermediary for all family interactions, McDowell has created a system where Knight's relationships with her children exist primarily at his discretion. Family members report feeling shut out from information about Knight's health, medical appointments, and general well-being. The financial dynamics of their relationship raise additional concerns. McDowell has parlayed his position as Knight's husband into control over her touring schedule, booking decisions, and career management. While Knight continues to generate substantial income through performances and appearances, McDowell oversees the business structure that determines how that money is managed and distributed. His background as a corporate consultant gave him sophisticated knowledge of business management and financial structures, skills that could be used to properly protect Knight's interests or to exploit them. The fact that he quickly transitioned from consultant to manager to husband suggests a calculated approach to positioning himself within Knight's professional and personal ecosystem.
I asked for the meeting in person at the last thing that Gladys and I was at when she was getting the medal. I said, all I need is about 15, 20 minutes of your time. And he told me point blank, that's not going to happen. Said it to me inside the White House.
Text messages revealed during the family dispute show McDowell's defensive response when confronted about Knight's condition. Rather than addressing the substantive health concerns raised by her son, McDowell focused on controlling the narrative and limiting external intervention. His messages emphasized maintaining Knight's routine and avoiding disruption to their established patterns. The couple's public presentation as a devoted partnership built on shared faith may mask more complex power dynamics. McDowell's role as both husband and manager creates inherent conflicts of interest where his personal financial benefit is directly tied to Knight's continued professional activity, regardless of her actual capacity or desire to perform. Former employees and family members describe McDowell as charming and protective in public settings, but controlling and manipulative in private family interactions. This duality is common in cases where elder abuse occurs within seemingly loving relationships. The perpetrator maintains a positive public image while exercising problematic control behind closed doors. The most troubling aspect of McDowell's control is how it's masked as care and protection. By positioning himself as Knight's primary caregiver and business manager, he can justify increased oversight and reduced independence as necessary support rather than controlling behavior. This makes it extremely difficult for outside observers to distinguish between appropriate assistance and inappropriate manipulation.
He manipulates that to the fullest, and not in a good way. She's being made to think that she needs to work. And what that means is that he's not going to be present with her.
Knight's own statements defending her marriage and praising McDowell's care must be evaluated within this context of potential manipulation. When someone exercises complete control over an elderly person's environment, information, and relationships, their public statements may not reflect their private experience or genuine preferences. The most insidious aspect of the alleged elder abuse involves how financial incentives may be driving Knight's continued touring, despite obvious health concerns. With McDowell serving as both husband and manager, his personal income is directly tied to Knight's professional activity, creating inherent conflicts of interest that prioritize revenue over well-being. Knight's touring income represents substantial financial assets that flow through business structures controlled by McDowell. As her manager, he oversees booking decisions, contract negotiations, and revenue distribution, all while benefiting personally from maximizing her professional activity. This arrangement means that reducing Knight's touring schedule would directly impact McDowell's income, regardless of whether such reduction would benefit Knight's health. The timing of Knight's continued touring schedule raises questions about who is making these decisions and based on what criteria. At 81, with documented cognitive issues and recent health scares, most artists would be scaling back their professional commitments. Instead, Knight maintains an aggressive touring schedule that seems to prioritize revenue generation over health considerations. Industry insiders report that Knight's touring fees remain substantial due to her legendary status and nostalgic appeal. Each canceled performance represents significant lost income, not just for Knight, but for McDowell and the broader team that depends on her continued activity. This creates financial pressure to maintain touring schedules, even when health conditions might argue for reduced activity. The power dynamics become more troubling when considering Knight's apparent dependence on McDowell for basic orientation and decision-making. If Knight becomes agitated when she doesn't know William's whereabouts, she may be psychologically incapable of making independent decisions about her career or finances. This dependency could be exploited to maintain touring schedules that serve McDowell's interests rather than Knight's well-being. The couple's joint involvement in business ventures, including their RHS Community Foundation, creates additional financial entanglements that complicate any evaluation of McDowell's motives. His income streams appear to be thoroughly integrated with Knight's professional activities, making it financially disadvantageous for him to acknowledge or address her declining capacity. Previous PPE company ventures and government contract discussions show McDowell actively using Knight's celebrity status to pursue business opportunities. While these activities aren't inherently problematic, they demonstrate how Knight's public profile translates into financial opportunities that benefit McDowell's business interests. The control McDowell exercises over Knight's professional relationships may extend to financial decision-making in ways that benefit his interests over hers. With Knight's cognitive capacity potentially compromised, she may be unable to fully understand or evaluate financial arrangements that affect her long-term security. The isolation of Knight from her family creates additional opportunities for financial manipulation. When children and other relatives are kept at arm's length from discussions about health, finances, and career decisions, there are fewer independent voices to question arrangements that may not serve Knight's best interests. Most concerning is how the financial incentives align with maintaining public denial about Knight's condition. Acknowledging significant cognitive decline would likely result in reduced bookings, canceled contracts, and decreased revenue. The financial machinery around Knight's career may depend on maintaining the fiction that she remains fully capable, regardless of the private realities. The fact that Knight continues touring while allegedly experiencing the kind of cognitive difficulties described by her family suggests that financial considerations may be overriding medical and safety concerns. In healthy family dynamics, loved ones would prioritize an elderly person's comfort and safety over continued income generation. The allegations suggest that this priority structure may be reversed in Knight's situation. Knight's own public statements about being excited to return to touring must be evaluated within the context of potential cognitive impairment and financial manipulation. Someone experiencing the kind of confusion described in Baltimore may not be capable of making informed decisions about whether continued touring serves their best interests. The entertainment industry's complicity in potentially exploitative arrangements highlights broader problems with how aging artists are treated when their capacity declines, but their earning potential remains strong. The same industry that celebrates Knight's legendary status may be participating in systems that prioritize profit over her well-being. The relationship between Gladys Knight and William McDowell began in 2001 when she was already an established legend, and he was a corporate consultant looking to expand his business opportunities. Their 3-month courtship and quick marriage created a partnership that has lasted over 2 decades. But the power dynamics suggest a relationship built more on dependency and control than on mutual partnership. Knight was 57 when she married McDowell, recovering from the devastating loss of her son James Newman III, who had died at age 36, leaving behind 5 children. In this vulnerable state, Knight found comfort in McDowell's attention and business acumen, but the relationship quickly evolved into something far more complex than typical marriage dynamics. McDowell's rapid transition from consultant to husband to manager created a unique position of power over Knight's personal and professional life. Unlike typical celebrity marriages where spouses maintain some independence, McDowell became the sole gatekeeper for virtually all aspects of Knight's existence, from career decisions to family relationships. The age gap of 14 years, while not unusual in celebrity relationships, has become more significant as Knight has aged. At 81, Knight may be increasingly dependent on McDowell's physical and mental capabilities, creating opportunities for him to exercise control that might not have existed when she was younger and more independent. Their shared Christian faith, which Knight frequently cites as the foundation of their marriage, may also serve as a mechanism for control. Religious frameworks that emphasize wifely submission and husband leadership can be manipulated to justify controlling behavior, making it difficult for Knight to recognize or resist inappropriate dynamics. The couples moved to North Carolina, away from Knight's historical base in Georgia and California, created additional isolation from her established support networks. This geographic separation from longtime friends, family members, and professional contacts reduced the number of independent voices in Knight's life who might question concerning developments. McDowell's control over Knight's professional schedule means he determines not just how much she works, but when, where, and under what conditions. This level of control over an elderly person's daily routine and professional activities creates opportunities for abuse that might not be immediately visible to outside observers. The fact that Knight's children report being kept at arm's length from their mother's medical care and daily life suggests that McDowell has successfully positioned himself as the primary authority on her needs and preferences. This isolation from family oversight is a classic element of elder abuse scenarios. Knight's public statements defending her marriage and praising McDowell's care may reflect genuine feelings, but they must be evaluated within the context of potential psychological manipulation. When someone exercises complete control over an elderly person's environment and relationships, their expressions of satisfaction may not reflect authentic choice or accurate assessment of their circumstances. The business partnership aspect of their marriage creates additional complexity because Knight's income directly benefits McDowell's financial situation. This creates incentives for him to prioritize activities that generate revenue over those that might better serve Knight's health and comfort. The couple's joint charitable work and business ventures create public presentations of partnership and shared purpose, but these activities may also serve to legitimize McDowell's control over Knight's resources and decision-making. Public philanthropy can mask private exploitation when the elderly person's capacity to make independent decisions is compromised. Most troubling is how the marriage dynamic may have evolved as Knight's cognitive capacity has declined. What might have begun as a partnership between equals may have transformed into a caretaker-dependent relationship, where Knight lacks the mental capacity to evaluate whether the arrangement continues to serve her interests. The length of their marriage, over 20 years, creates additional legitimacy for McDowell's control that might not exist in newer relationships. Long-established patterns of dependency and decision-making can be difficult to challenge, even when they become inappropriate, due to changing circumstances like cognitive decline. To understand the explosive allegations rocking the music world, you have to know who's making them. Shenga Hankerson isn't just Gladys Knight's concerned son. He's a convicted felon with a history of exploiting his mother's name for personal gain, and his criminal past casts a shadow over every accusation he makes. In 1997, Hankerson opened the first Gladys Knight's Chicken and Waffles restaurant in Atlanta, trading on his mother's legendary status to build what appeared to be a successful business empire. The restaurant became an Atlanta institution, drawing celebrities and tourists eager to taste the soul food supposedly endorsed by the Empress of Soul herself. But behind the success story was a pattern of financial misconduct that would eventually destroy everything. From 2012 to 2016, while customers lined up for the famous Midnight Train special, 4 jumbo chicken wings on a golden waffle, Hankerson was systematically stealing over $1 million in payroll taxes meant for Social Security and Medicare. The scope of his betrayal was staggering. Employee paychecks bounced while Hankerson lived lavishly. Former workers told investigators he spent the stolen tax money on sex parties and marijuana while his staff struggled to keep the restaurants running. One general manager put $12,000 on his personal credit card just to keep employee health insurance from lapsing. When Georgia Department of Revenue agents raided the restaurants in June 2016, they found a business empire built on systematic theft. Hankerson was arrested and charged with racketeering, having pocketed $52,000 in state taxes during March and April 2016 alone. Despite generating $8 million in annual sales on paper, the company was financially destroyed by his greed.
When I really noticed it was like right at my sentencing, where she came to speak for me, and she couldn't form complete sentences and coherent thought.
The betrayal of his employees was particularly cruel. While they worked for bouncing paychecks and uncertain benefits, Hankerson used company money for personal entertainment. Former manager Charles Preston worked 8 years at the downtown location, watching the slow-motion collapse of a business destroyed by its owner's criminal conduct. Gladys Knight herself became a victim of her son's schemes. She had allowed him to use her name and likeness for the restaurants, trusting her child to honor her reputation. Instead, she was forced to sue her own son to remove her name from the failing business empire, watching helplessly as his criminal conduct damaged her carefully built legacy. In November 2021, Hankerson was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison and ordered to pay over $1 million in restitution. U.S. District Judge Michael Brown called his actions a willful disregard for legal obligations spanning multiple years. The man who had built his business on his mother's name was now a convicted felon.
I don't care about any of that. As a matter of fact, I don't care about anybody saying I'm sabotaging anything.
But Hankerson's criminal history goes deeper than tax evasion. Court documents reveal a pattern of using his famous connections for financial manipulation. As the son of record executive Barry Hankerson, who managed artists like Aaliyah and R. Kelly, Shenga had access to music industry networks that he consistently exploited for personal gain. The timing of his elder abuse allegations is particularly suspicious. Just months after completing his prison sentence, Hankerson emerged with a new strategy to insert himself into his mother's life and potentially her finances. Having destroyed his own business empire through criminal conduct, he now claims to be the concerned son protecting his mother from exploitation. His explosive accusations against William McDowell come from a man who spent years exploiting his mother's name for criminal enterprise. Every allegation must be viewed through the lens of his demonstrated willingness to manipulate family relationships for financial gain. When a convicted felon who spent years stealing from his own employees suddenly becomes concerned about elder abuse, the motives deserve scrutiny. The pattern is clear. Shenga Hankerson has consistently used his famous family connections to build schemes that ultimately collapsed in scandal. His restaurants failed because of his criminal conduct. His reputation was destroyed by his own greed. Now, armed with serious allegations about his mother's mental state, he's attempting yet another manipulation of family dynamics for personal advantage. The confrontation between Hankerson and McDowell represents more than a family dispute. It's a battle between a convicted criminal seeking redemption through family intervention and a husband defending his control over a declining wife. Both men have financial motives that complicate their claims to be protecting Knight's interests. Hankerson's admission that he is deliberately sabotaging Knight's tour represents the kind of radical intervention that may be necessary when normal family processes have broken down. Or it may represent another form of exploitation by a man who has consistently used his mother's fame for personal purposes. The tragedy may be that Knight, suffering from cognitive decline and trapped between competing interests, has become a prisoner of circumstances created by the very people who claim to love her most. Whether Hankerson's allegations represent genuine concern or calculated manipulation, they have already damaged Knight's reputation and complicated her final years in ways that serve no one's interests except those seeking control over her legacy and resources. Anyway, that's it for this video, folks. Bye.